I made this working Minecraft clock, and this is the story of how I made it. In Minecraft, you can tell the time using a clock by looking at the location of both the sun and the moon compared to where the clock is. So this is how I am going to make my clock. To make this clock, I'm using a Bamboo Labs kit clock. However, this is a 12-hour clock and I need a 24-hour clock. So to fix this, I've made these gears which have a 2-to-1 gear ratio, so it should make it a 24-hour clock if I can get it working. This was my first test of the gear system, which it rolls around somewhat smoothly, but it could be improved. But for now, I just left it as it was. For my second attempt of the gears, I put a hole on the inside gear so that I could put it onto the clock module, and I also made it a bit thinner since it was a bit too thick. However, the hole was not the right size, it was a bit too small, I couldn't get it actually onto the clock. For attempt 3, I just tried to fix the size of the hole, and it fitted perfectly. But now I was going to actually redesign the gear itself because it was overlapping in these parts here. And this is my final revision of the gear. It's got the same sized hole, but it is so much smoother than the other one. Since I had now finished the gears, I started working on the case for the clock module. So I've printed it out, and let's see if it fits. And it fits perfectly. And now that I feel that I'm somewhat finished with the test, I have started actually working on the proper design. And so I've started importing the measurements and stuff from my previous tests. So this part will be the top of the case of the clock module. And now I've imported the design for the gears. And I'm also moving them to the right location in the design. So this is the design so far. We've got 2 gears and the top of the case. And now I'm creating the rest of the dial, which the outer gear will be attached to. And now I'm going to start working on the actual base part. Here I'm working on making a cover for the bottom of the clock module, but I ended up not even using it, so yes, this was just a waste of time. Not actually sure why I made the base part circular, because I needed to make it rectangular anyway. So this is a section analysis of what I've got so far. And now I'm making the base the actual shape of the clock. and it already looks so much better. And now I'm adding the walls that will conceal the dial. And now I'm finishing off the rest of the dial while also adding this little bolt that will hopefully take some of the weight off of the clock module. And finally I'm adding the sun and the moon to the dial. What I'm doing here is making sure that it can still print properly. And now it's time to make the final part, faceplate, which will cover the dial and make it so you can actually read the time. And this piece will also hold the bolt, which will hold the dial. I'm making the faceplate with sort of 2 height layers to mimic the texture of the actual game. And now we're pretty much at the final stage. We're nearly ready to 3D print this. All I had to do was test that I could mount it to my wall properly by printing this little test print. And it worked great, so I implemented it into the model and I 3D printed. Okay, so all the pieces are printed and we've got the dial, the base, the faceplate, the thing I never gave a name, and finally the gear. So to assemble my clock, I'm going to put the clock module inside the base like this. And I'm also going to put the bolt, or whatever I decided to call it, inside the dial so that it can spin properly. And then the bolt will attach to the faceplate. First up, I'm putting the clock inside the base. And then I'm adding the gear to the clock part. Then I'm putting the bolt through the dial and then gluing the bolt to the faceplate. Now all I have to do is put it together, and then I'll have the Minecraft clock. And this is it, my Minecraft clock that actually works. The clock is actually really useful for just telling the time roughly without actually needing to know the exact time. I'm really happy with how the clock ended up. It's exactly how I wanted it to. Thanks for watching.